Hello and welcome to the Mets in the UK podcast. All things Mets from a UK perspective, coming at you on YouTube and Spotify. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Mets in the UK. Use the hashtag to get involved, hashtag MITUK. Today with your co-hosts Tom NYM UK and XX Toria XX, also known as that British Mets girl. Toria, how are you doing this week?
I am pretty good, thanks. How are you?
I am good, feeling rested from my travels into Europe.
We missed you last week.
I know. I've missed out on the Mets as well. Internet not the best on the continent, so I've had to catch up with box scores and reading reports. I'm sure you'll be able to fill me in with all things Mets from the last week. So if we start off on things there, since the last podcast, Mets lost 8-3 against the Twins. Mets took the series 2-1 before heading out onto the road, where the first of the 10-game road series was against the LA Angels. First game, it was a 5-1 win. We saw the debut from Paul Blackburn, new pitcher picked up from the Oakland A's. Quality start from him. Those of you that don't know what a quality start is, that is defined as 6 or more innings pitched with less than or equal to 3 earned runs. Blackburn had a great start in his first appearance as a Met. He's got a very good record against the Angels, but it'll be interesting to see whether he can maintain that moving forward and at Citi Field. But lots of positive comments from him before and after the game. He's excited to be a Met and playing at Citi Field. So that's a positive one to look out for in the future. Game 2 against the Angels was a 5-4 loss. We saw a JD Martinez go-ahead grand slam, which was then ruined from Brazaban in the pen, costing us the game. We also saw Ben Joyce set the record for the fastest save pitch at 104.7 miles per hour. The game was ruined a little bit. Lots of angry people online at the screaming girls who would not stop screaming throughout the game. I'm sure, Tori, you can fill us in on that one in a second. And then last night we saw a 3-2 loss to the Angels. More offensive woes. Lindor had a home run called foul. Good pitching from the Angels again. It's been a bit of a surprise with the pitcher that started last night for the Angels. And it is our first series loss since June. Now, obviously, the Mets have been on a fantastic run from the London series, so it's not the end of the world losing a series. I think they've done fantastically well to get to this point without losing a series. But as I said, I didn't catch the games. I was on the continent. So, Toria, fill us in. What were your thoughts on the game?
I honestly, like, the Twins game seems so long ago now, but that was lost in the third inning. So we gave up 5 runs with no outs. I mean, we were almost fortunate to get away with 5 runs, lots of small ball. At that point, I mean, you know me, I'm always to the last out. But you could see we were done. I mean, we had a Vientos bomb in there, which was great, always positive. The boy is on fire. But it was, yeah, once that happens in the third, we looked buried. Then, of course, we moved to Anaheim. I'll be honest, I was surprised that we lost the series. I did say last week that you just never know with the Angels. I watch a lot of Angels baseball, and they can either be very good and a lot of fun, or they can be full of errors. And we saw their errors in game 1. We got 13 hits, and we just kept pounding them. Interestingly for me, that one was the pitcher I wanted us to sign in Tyler Anderson, who, of course, because I'd been hyping him, he gave us the win, which is fine. Thanks, Tyler. Against the starting pitcher that we did sign, so it was quite an interesting one for me to see that matchup. But happy to get the win. Game 2 was almost just like, obviously we got the go ahead, and I think I mentioned before, I can't remember if it was on the last pod with you or with John last week, the Angels recently have been coming back they are capable of coming back. You can never write them off, just the same as you can't write us off. You can never write them off. Zach Neto doing Zach Neto things. I mean, I said it even online last night. I was like, I enjoy watching Zach Neto. Here's one of the best things about the LA Angels. I was like, can you just not do Neto things tonight, please? And Joyce was another pitch. I mean, he's a rookie, so the chances of kind of luring him away were slim to none anyway. But he's kind of had to step into that closer role with the Angels letting Estevez go, and he's another one where he comes in and there's just nothing you can do against his pitching. But prior to that, he was a setup guy, and he did exactly the same, often in the eighth. So I wasn't surprised to see that from him from the pen. I was very surprised to see us not jump all over Griffin Canning last night. That's okay. Game two, I can kind of take losing. We were still competitive. We got the home run. It was a bit of an odd game where I kind of didn't really. There was a few interesting moments, but it was a weird one. Whereas last night was just. I was begging. I was like, come on, I knew that Canning was the one to get at, so I wanted us to be all over him, getting those runs in before they got to the pen, and we just couldn't do it. However, Jeff has continued to hit throughout all of it, which is really positive. And we've had a few highlights. It's not, we don't need to go and hide under a rock somewhere. And what's also worth mentioning is Gelbs' call of JD's Grand Slam. It was a really, really great call. So if you haven't watched it yet, go back and take a look at that, because it was Gelbs coming of age, I think. That call.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I know there's been mixed reviews about Gelbs. Obviously, whenever Gary Cohen steps away from the booth, those are some very, very big shoes to fill. And he's been such a mainstay of Mets baseball and commentary. It's inevitable that people forget, in the early days, he will have been in a similar position to Gelbs, where he would have learned on the job. And he had some great people alongside him, helping him sort of learn his craft and perfect things. And I can understand Gelbs is not the best play-by-play if you're going to compare him to Gary Cohen. Absolutely. But not many people can be compared to Gary Cohen. So much so that Michael Kay is very salty about Gary Cohen in the Mets booth. But it's one of those things where he's going to take time, like a prospect in the farm system. Exactly. He's going to take time to come of age. He will get it right. We all love Gelbs. He's a very great guy. He's very likable on camera. And, fair play to him for giving it a go, because it can't be easy finding the need to fill all of that airtime in that space. So I have seen a bit of the highlights since I've come back. I don't think he did horribly. I think he did okay. It wasn't unlistenable by any means, other than game two with all the screams and the crowd.
Oh, so yeah, the screams, of course, the screams. That was, thankfully, it wasn't quite the whole game. It was towards the end of the game. And there were two girls right behind home plate. Now, I am all for screaming, getting behind your team, especially when it's children. You want the children to be excited.
Of course.
But this was beyond screaming. And all I just kept hoping, I was thinking, they're going to lose their voice any second, because it was just where it was coming from, I have no idea. And it was how it wasn't distracting for both teams. It must have been. It must have been. And it was just ear piercing. Now, like I said, I'm all for let them scream, let them have fun. However, if I were with them, I'd have just been like, just pay it back a notch too, just out of consideration for the people around you more than anything else, because it was bad enough hearing it through the TV. I can't imagine what it was like. Now, I will say that, at stupid o'clock in the morning, it helps to keep people awake.
Yes.
So So, that's another joy of UK fandom is, it's such a stupid time. Stupid.
It is.
2:38 to the starts.
It's a very specific time as well.
It is. I think it's something to do with TV or whatever, but it's a stupid, like I've said this before, I think when it was 3:10 starts, and I think when we're in Seattle, I think it's 3:10 starts. That's fine. I'm used to my day starting around 5:00. So first game's a struggle, but I try and go to bed a bit earlier and just start my day earlier. 2:38, like what? That is literally the middle of the night. And in fact, when the games were finishing, there was one I was seeing all over the place. It was like Mets After Dark or something, and I'm just like, the sun is coming up.
Yeah.
Oh, how am I supposed to get back to sleep now? And then, next week in Colorado, I know we'll get there. It's going to be even worse. Anyway,
it's a rough 10-game stretch, not just for the Mets, but for us in the UK as well. Whilst we're talking about all things Mets, moving on to the news and updates sort of section of the pod. It's August. It's a little bit too early to start worrying about standings and where we are. But obviously, with things going the way that they have, everyone's kind of got one eye on the wild card at the moment. So just an update on the standings as of the time of recording on the Monday. We are yet to play the Cardinals. So as of recording, NL East, we are 8 games behind the Phillies, 2 games behind the Braves, sat in 3rd place, looking fairly solid there. In the wildcard standings, we are just outside, holding that 4th place slot at the moment. So in the wildcard games behind, or the WCGB, we are 1.5 games behind that wildcard spot. Other Mets news going on at the moment. Tyler McGill was optioned to AAA. That looks likely to be something to keep him fresh as a starter, possibly to do a bit of bullpen work. We're not too sure on where that's going to go just yet. Logan Porter, the catcher that was signed as a free agent from the Royals, he's been outrighted to AAA, free up an extra man on the 40-man roster. We also had sad news from Will Salmon of The Athletic. Ronnie Mauricio is now officially out for the season, had that injury earlier on in the year, and we weren't too sure when Ronnie was going to be making an appearance, if he was at all this year. He's had an additional surgery to remove some scar tissue. The Mets have commented that they are optimistic that in the postseason he will be competing, whatever that means. It sounds to me like he's going to have a normal sort of off-season and be ready for a push in 2025. Jet Williams also almost back to full fitness on his Instagram, posting some images of him doing some weights in the gym, looking very ripped. He was our 2022 first-round draft pick. He is the shortstop, come centre fielder. Not quite sure what we're going to do with him, but we'll put him somewhere. Will be good to see Jet playing again. Probably looking unlikely that he's going to make it up this year with the injuries that he's had, but you never know with the Mets, anything is possible. Whilst we're talking about Mets that might be coming up, Brandon Sproat, who we talked about from the Futures game, absolutely crushing it in AA. There was 13 strikeouts in one of his games, got pitcher of the week. He has now been promoted to AAA as per Mike Puma and many of the other Mets sources online. Looking possible that Sproat could come up, maybe late September, maybe a late call up there. But I suppose ultimately we're going to need to see how he does in AAA, which is a step up from AA with the Rumble Ponies. Hopefully he does well and continues to crush it there and is not going to get shelled. The batting sort of quality in AAA is much higher than it is in AA. So it will be interesting to see how he does. As always, we'll be rooting for him and the rest of our Mets in the minors. Any comments on that, Toria?
Yeah, I think mostly getting people back from injury, like Jet Williams. He is such an exciting prospect. I am really, really pleased that he's on his way back so that he can at least get some work in. With his wheels, I think he'll end up outfield. Personally, because he can move. So I'm excited to see him back. I really, really want to see Sproat do well. I am hoping that he doesn't get absolutely hammered in his first appearance, because we don't want to knock his confidence. Like you said, the standard is completely different. I mean, I'm sure he's got the right people around him to kind of help him through that anyway, but I am so excited to have seen, I mean, like you said, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago. I'm so excited to see that progress. And who knows, come end of September, if we want to give some of the guys a bit of an extra break, stretch them out a little bit more, as we hopefully make a push for postseason. It may be that he comes up just to fill a hole here and there. It's not unheard of for that to be, for clubs to extend their rotation over that period. So we shall see. With regards to the standings, it's probably worth noting that the Padres and the Pirates play each other this week. They're both around us. And the Braves are starting a series at the Brewers. Now, the Brewers, although they lost their last couple of games against the Nationals, you would think they're going to want a bit of a reaction to that. So, the Brewers are just on fire. So hopefully they might be able to do us a bit of a favour against the Braves this coming week. And Arizona are at Cleveland as well, and Cleveland are also flying high. So we might, I mentioned this as well, I think over the All-Star break time, about how we've got, over the next couple of months, a number of the teams around us playing each other, and we're starting to see that now. So don't be surprised if things change quite significantly, even over this week, just because of how the schedules are working out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to remember as well that although it looks on paper, I hate using the phrase because there's no such thing as an easy game, but it looks like we've got an easy schedule, and it's far from being the case. The Mets, historically, not just this year, have really struggled when playing down to, with all due respect, lesser teams, teams not doing as well, teams at the bottom of their divisions. And they have struggled historically against those kind of teams. And I think it's also worth remembering that the Mets are on a 10-game road series. There's 8,000 miles plus traveled in 11 days. That's going to take its toll on the body. It's a very difficult time for the Mets. Even if they were playing top-tier teams, that would still be difficult. And it's also worth, remembering that these teams, the Mets are a scalp. We've had that run where we've not lost a series until the Angels since the beginning of June. The Mets are high-flying. They've been playing really well. All the positives that have gone around the team since they've turned things around at the end of May, they're a scalp for these lesser teams. They're a big market team anyway, and they're going to up their game, because for them, this is the kind of thing that, the Angels look good, having just beaten the Mets in a 3-game series, when in reality, with all due respect to the Angels, it's probably not the case. So I think it's worth remembering, we've got these difficult games coming up. Like you said, a lot's going to change in those standings. And if we're thinking to what's coming up, like I said, it's a 10-game road series. I think any one of us before the series started, if we're realistic, it was probably looking 6-4 maybe for the Mets. If you were being ambitious and you wanted to push the guys, 7-3, 8-2, you're probably starting to look a bit crazy.
Even I would struggle with that.
Yeah, and you are the most optimistic Mets fan I know by a long way. I think if you said 5-5, you're probably waving the white flag a bit too early. But 6-4 would have been a fair shout, I think, before the 10 games had started. We're currently 1-2 on the road. Got a weird one tonight. The Cardinals, this is one game where they've made the Mets fly from LA all the way over to St. Louis for one game against the Cardinals. This is a makeup game from May. It was rained off, some horrific weather that they had in May. We'll get to the Rockies and the Mariners in a minute. I'm just going to talk about the Cardinals game today. This is particularly interesting. The Cardinals are below us in the wild card standings at the moment. If they win the game, it's nothing to worry about. They're not going to leapfrog us, but they are below us in that slot. What's interesting is that the lineup has come out whilst we have been sort of discussing prior to coming on air. Pete Alonso is below the cleanup spot for the first time in over 600 games for the Mets. Now, this comes off the back of a lot of discussion within the last sort of 24, 48 hours online and Mets Twitter around Pete. What do we do with Pete Alonso? We can all, I'm sure, away from the media cameras, Pete would quite happily admit he's not having the best year. I think we can all see that, and I think Pete knows that himself. We are, of course, rooting for Pete Alonso. This is not one of those shows where we're going to pile on him and trash him by any means. We want him to do well. Clearly, the contract year has affected him. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But a lot of the discussion is coming around the idea that perhaps it's time to sit Pete. Perhaps it's time for him to have a number of games out, playing Vientos at first base, letting Pete not even DH, just having some time away from the team, just so he can clear whatever funk is going on with him. Because I think we can all see it. The pitchers light up with glee when he steps up to the plate. They're throwing breaking balls to him left, right, and centre because he's chasing them. What are your thoughts, Toria? Do you think we should sit Pete for a few games, let him clear his head and bring him back fresh? Is Vientos at first the solution? What are your thoughts?
No. It's my we played Vientos at first a few games ago, if I remember rightly. And that was kind of a hint at maybe they were seeing if that was something that they could do. But Pete's defense is still really good. Yeah. So even though he's not hitting, I would worry if he's not at first base. And for the most part, the rest of our batting lineup has picked up. So actually, we can kind of carry this on. If you think about how we've gone, we've had players who have been slumping. Jeff's just come back out of his. Lindor started, I mean, to be fair, when Lindor was going through his, so was everyone else. The point is that actually, at the moment, not in every game, but we're not going to win every game. No. We're kind of able to kind of carry that. Whether we should have to or not is a different matter. Yes, he's underperforming. There's no getting away from that. But I believe that what he gives us in defense is worth carrying the bat for, because we've got 8 other guys in the lineup who can hit. So I think he'll come out of it. I think taking him out would perhaps have an adverse effect unless he requested it. I think if he feels like he needs that time out, then absolutely let him have it. But I think as far as the Mets taking that decision for him, I don't think they should sit him.
Yeah, I agree. I think Pete's not the kind of person who's going to request that either. I think he's very much the same sort of mold as Lindor, where I will play 162 games unless I am injured. Mm-hmm. Seems to be the mindset from those two. Brandon Nimmo as well, I'd also throw into that mix as well. Yeah, an interesting discussion. I agree completely on the defense side of things. You know, Vientos is still learning the game with some important games in the schedule coming up. I think, Vientos at first with his defense, maybe not the best solution there as well, if you consider what the alternative is. But we'd like to know what your thoughts are. We're going to be putting a poll under the tweet and the posts. We'd love you to vote on that, get involved. Leave us a comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Do you think Pete needs to sit, yes or no? Whilst you're there as well, if you want to give us a subscribe and a like, that would really help with promoting the content and the channel that little bit further. So before we move on to the Rockies and the Mariners, Toria, are we going to beat the Cardinals, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Yes, we are. We have Mania starting for us. He generally takes an inning or two to settle down, but I think as long as we can keep Tommy Pham quiet, Pham hits well against Mania. So as long as we can keep him quiet, maybe he'll just want to do his old buddies a favor and just kind of stay quiet for us. Then we should be okay. It's just annoying that we have to slot this road trip. Was tough enough as it is. It's not ideal having to kind of schedule this in, and I'm sure that poor Keith Hernandez agrees. It's not been it's not been the best of times for him either. Worth noting though, just a reminder that actually we are playing for a sweep. as well.
Yes.
So, we are 2 up in this series. We've already won the series. Let's get a sweep at a relatively decent UK-friendly time as well. 10:15 for us tonight.
Yes, not a bad start by all means, certainly on a West Coast road trip tour. After the Cardinals, we head off to Colorado for 3 games against the Rockies, and then all the way out to Seattle for 3 games against the Mariners. By the time the Mets have played all of those games, it will then be our next podcast. So, not including the Cardinals games, because we just talked about that. 6 games there against the Rockies and against the Mariners. What you put a magic number on it, T? What are we going to go with?
I would like to say 4-2, or possibly even 5-1. Possibly, I think we're going to do Colorado. I think that we start the series with Sevy. He won't be happy about getting a loss the other night. He'll be looking to bounce back from that. They are currently, as of recording, 41-72. We follow Sevy with Blackburn and then Peterson. Yes, Peterson picked up his first loss of the season the other day, but they are solid guys, right? We've got our decent pitchers going against a terrible pitching staff at Colorado. Their ERA, their 3 starters are kind of just below or just above 5. So you never know with us, because we could just go really, really cold. But we should hit there.
It's a hitter's paradise.
It is, exactly.
Stadium, isn't
exactly. It? So I'm hopeful of a sweep there. The Mariners, yes, they're top of their division. They're only 5 games over 500, and they are kind of just clinging on to that lead. They've been helped out by the teams below them not doing so well. So it's a little bit deceptive, their position. They are absolutely beatable, although I'd actually feel more confident if we were playing them at our place rather than theirs. They have a really great record at home. So I think once we get through the stupid timed Colorado games, it's even worse than 238 in LA. Then I think that I'd like 5-1. I'll be happy with 6-2.
Yeah, I think if we're realistic, the Mariners is the difficult set of games, as you say. If we take the Cardinals game, that takes us up to 2-2 on the road. If you then go 4-2 in those games, like we just said, that would take us up to the 6-4 on the 10 games that we said would have been a positive one. Like we said earlier in the pod, I don't think you can win them all. Whilst the Mets have been great, they've looked like a above 500 team or thereabouts over the average of the season. That's kind of where they're at. We're not expecting by any means this to be a repeat of 2022 with 101 wins. We're not expecting that. It's a very different team, a very different set of tactics. Too many variables are different in that sense. So I think, if we're realistic, 4-2 on the Rockies and the Mariners, I think that's a fair way to end the road trip.
Much as I said that I expect us to win today, I won't be surprised if we don't, purely given the fact that we're just kind of ducking in there. It's going to be difficult for them to get. I mean, they're professional athletes, and their competitive spirit should make them want to win. But it's tricky. It's tricky for them. They're just going to want to get in and out.
Yeah, and it's like you say, it's a difficult thing to fly into a city, play one game, and then leave straight away to go to another city. As I said earlier in the pod, we're talking about over 8,000 miles travelled in 11 days. Yeah. That's going to take its toll on anyone, whether you're an athlete at the top of your condition or not. That's a lot of travelling to do in a very short space of time. Okay, so thanks for the podcast today, Toria. It's been great chatting all things Mets and being back. Look forward to seeing how we do on the rest of this road trip, and look forward to chatting all things Mets. Same time again next week. We will be back on Tuesday, seeing what's gone on in all things Mets. Any closing thoughts to finish the show?
No, just let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets. And don't forget to like and subscribe and answer our poll. Catch you next week, guys. Let's go Mets.